It was supposed to be just another weekend trip, a peaceful escape into the woods, away from the noise of the world. Mark Whitaker, a devoted father and quiet nature lover, had taken his 8-year-old daughter Lily on a fishing trip deep into the Everglades. It was something they both looked forward to. Mark wasn't a flashy guy. He didn't care for crowds or screens. What he loved most was spending time with his daughter, teaching her how to tie a fishing line, showing her how to skip rocks across the lake, and watching her eyes light up when she caught even the tiniest fish. Lily had packed her favorite pink backpack, stuffed with snacks, and a little journal she used to draw frogs and bugs in. Mark had his camera slung over his shoulder, like he always did, ready to capture memories they could look back on. They waved goodbye to Emily, Mark's wife, and Lily's mom, as the truck disappeared into the early morning mist. That was the last time she saw them together. For days, nothing seemed unusual. Emily wasn't too worried when they didn't call right away. They were often out of cell service range. But when 48 hours passed without a single message, and the sun rose again without them returning, a knot of fear settled in her chest. She called the rangers, then the local sheriff, and before long, a full search and rescue operation had begun. The Everglades is no place to get lost. It's vast and unforgiving. Thick marshes, twisting waterways, and endless stretches of swamp make even experienced hikers cautious. The search teams combed through trees, scanned riverbanks, and flew over open areas by helicopter, but there was no sign of them. No footprints, no campsite, no gear, just emptiness, as if Mark and Lily had vanished into thin air. 3 weeks went by. The news covered the story for a while. Father and daughter vanish on fishing trip. The headlines read. People speculated everything from animal attacks to getting lost to something more sinister. But then the coverage died down. Just like the leads, Emily refused to believe they were gone forever. She said she could feel it in her bones. Her daughter was still alive, somewhere. Then, on a chilly morning in October, something changed. A hunter named Tom Barrett was tracking deer just outside the marked trails when he noticed something unusual near a cypress grove, a flash of color among the thick roots and mud. At first, he thought it was litter, but as he got closer, he saw a small waterproof camera, half buried under leaves and twigs, with a faded strap still attached. Curious, Tom wiped it off and stuffed it in his pack. When he got home, he plugged it into his computer. What he found made his hands tremble. The camera still worked, and it had pictures, dozens of them. The last date stamp was from 3 weeks earlier, the day Mark and Lily had left for their trip. The first few photos were normal. Mark smiling at the lake, Lily holding up a fish, the sun shimmering on the water. But as Tom clicked through the pictures, the tone shifted. There were shots of the woods taken in a hurry, tilted and blurry. Then one of Mark, crouched low, looking over his shoulder, fear in his eyes. And then, nothing. The last photo was completely black. Tom immediately called the sheriff. Authorities rushed back to the spot where the camera had been found. This time, they looked deeper. A few hundred yards from the grove, they discovered broken branches, signs of a struggle, and something far worse, a shallow patch of freshly turned soil. Forensics confirmed what Emily had feared most. Mark had been found, and he hadn't died from the elements. Something, or someone, had killed him. But there was no sign of Lily. Her backpack was missing. Her jacket wasn't there. There were no tiny footprints nearby, just silence, thick and eerie, hanging in the air. What happened in those woods? What had Mark seen that made him look over his shoulder like that? And how did that camera, tossed away in the mud, survive when nothing else did. Emily held on to one thought. If Mark died trying to protect Lily, then maybe, just maybe, he succeeded. But the clock was ticking, and every hour that passed made it harder to hold on to hope. And then came another clue. A week after the camera was found, a wildlife photographer passing through a restricted zone spotted something strange. In the distance, movement near a rusted-out hunting shed that hadn't been used in years. Through his zoom lens, he saw a small shape dart inside. Something, or someone, was still out there. Was it Lily? No one knew for sure, but the sheriff's department mobilized immediately, and Emily begged to go with them. She didn't care about the rules or the danger. If her daughter was alive, she needed to be the one to find her. They moved in as the sun began to set, the golden light casting long shadows across the wet ground. The woods held its breath, and what they discovered next would change everything. But not all questions had answers. Not all stories have endings you expect, and what was captured on that camera still hides a truth no one was ready to face. The air was thick with tension as the search team moved toward the abandoned shed. Emily's heart pounded with every step, her eyes scanning the trees, searching for any sign of Lily. The shed stood quiet and still, its wooden walls cracked from years of weather and neglect. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades, but something had definitely been inside. A torn piece of pink fabric hung from a nail on the door, faded, but unmistakably from Lily's backpack. Emily froze when she saw it, her breath caught in her throat. "She's here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The officers motioned for silence as they opened the door slowly, their flashlights cutting through the dusty air inside. But the shed was empty. No Lily, just old tools, broken furniture, and scattered signs that someone, possibly a child, had been there recently. A small blanket on the floor, empty food wrappers, a cracked plastic water bottle. But no girl. Emily felt the weight of disappointment crush her. She had been so sure. Still, this changed everything. Lily had survived. She had been here, and she was staying hidden. But why? The sheriff pulled Emily aside and told her gently, "We're going to expand the search grid. If she's out here, we'll find her." But Emily couldn't wait. That night, while the others slept, she went back into the woods with just a flashlight and a photo of Lily tucked in her coat. She moved through the underbrush slowly, calling her daughter's name softly, hoping, praying, listening. She didn't know it yet, but someone else was listening too. In a nearby tree line, a young man stood watching her. He was thin, pale, with wild eyes and a nervous twitch in his hands. Locals called him Milo, though no one really knew where he'd come from. He'd been living off the grid in the Everglades for years. Rumored to be dangerous, even unstable. He didn't talk to people. He didn't trust them. But he saw things others didn't. And on the day Mark and Lily went missing, Milo had been nearby. He'd heard shouting, then silence. And later, he'd found Lily, alone, crying by the edge of the water. He didn't know what had happened to her dad, but something in his gut told him it was bad. So, he did the only thing he could think of. He hid her, deep in the swamp, far from any trail or search party. Milo had built a small shelter, made of tree branches and tarp. It wasn't much, but it was safe. Lily had stayed there for days. He gave her food, talked to her in soft tones, kept her away from the people looking for her, because in his mind, they were the danger. Milo didn't know who he could trust, and when Lily tried to tell him what happened, her words didn't make sense to him. Something about a man in the woods, not her father, someone else, someone watching them, taking pictures, following them for days. At first, Mark thought it was just another camper. But then strange things started happening. Their boat had been tampered with. Their food supply went missing. They'd found scratch marks on the trees near their tent. Mark became anxious, constantly checking over his shoulder. The last night, Lily remembered being woken by her dad's voice. He was arguing with someone. Then she ran. Milo didn't understand all of it, but he believed her. Still, he didn't want to bring attention to himself. He had secrets too, things he'd seen over the years, things no one would believe. Back at the search base, the sheriff received a tip from a ranger who remembered seeing someone lurking in the deeper woods weeks earlier. Skinny, unshaven, carrying supplies in an old shopping cart. That description matched Milo. The pieces started falling into place. Maybe he had answers. Maybe he'd seen something. Or worse, the hunt shifted. Now, law enforcement was looking for two missing persons, Lily and the man who might be holding her. But Emily refused to believe Milo was the enemy. She didn't know him, but something in her gut told her Lily wasn't in danger with him. The real danger was still out there, and nobody was looking for him. The man who had followed them. The man who had taken Mark. Then came another break. From the memory card inside Mark's camera, authorities were able to recover corrupted video footage. Most of it was glitchy or blurred, but one short clip played clearly. Mark was recording the lake when a shadow moved behind him. He turned sharply, camera shaking, then whispered, "Who are you? What do you want?" A few seconds later, there was a loud thud, and the screen went black. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't an accident. Someone had been out there. Suddenly the case wasn't about a father and daughter getting lost in the woods. It was something far darker. Someone had been hunting them, and now he might still be out there. Emily's fear deepened, but so did her determination. She had to get to Lily before anyone else did, before the wrong person found her. And she wasn't alone. One of the search team members, Deputy Clara Reyes, had her doubts about the case. From the start, something about the way the scene was found didn't sit right with her. She began digging deeper into missing person cases from the past, strange disappearances in the same region, even complaints about illegal hunting or suspicious activity in the area. A disturbing pattern started to form. Families had gone missing before, stories buried, investigations cut short, always in the same part of the swamp, and one name kept surfacing. A former guide and survivalist named Richard Vance, a man who knew the Everglades like the back of his hand, a man who had vanished years ago after being accused of violence toward campers, but was never charged. Rumors said he still lived out there, alone, watching, waiting. Now everything pointed back to him, and Emily, deep in the woods, unknowingly, getting closer to her daughter, was also getting closer to something much more dangerous. The trees around her felt like they were closing in. Every snap twig sounded louder. Every rustle in the brush made her flinch. She was no longer just looking for Lily. She was walking into a trap, and the man in the woods. He wasn't done yet. Emily's steps slowed as the canopy thickened above her. The last trace of sunlight swallowed by moss-draped trees. Her flashlight flickered, and for a moment, everything went still. No birds, no insects, just the quiet crackle of dead leaves beneath her boots. Somewhere deep in the Everglades, her daughter was alive, and someone else was watching. She didn't know that just a mile ahead, Milo was crouched near a shallow stream, whispering gently to Lily. "You have to stay here," he said, his voice trembling. "I have to go get help. I think they're getting close, but I can't let him find you first." Lily looked up, her eyes tired but clear. What if he comes back? Milo paused. He had no answer for that. He'd seen the man again the night before, just a silhouette across the water, standing too still, watching too long. Milo had always feared people, but this man, he felt evil. Something about him made the hair on his arms stand up, and he knew, deep down, the man was still hunting, not for food, not for sport, but for control, for power, maybe even for revenge. Milo stood and handed Lily a small whistle. If you hear someone calling your name and it's not me, blow this, just once. I'll come fast as I can. Then he was gone. Emily, moving closer to the last GPS marker, spotted something strange. Broken branches, a small thread of tarp, a muddy footprint too small to belong to an adult. Her heart jumped. Lily, she began calling her name softly. Lily, it's Mum. Baby, can you hear me? From behind a fallen log, a tiny voice called back. Hesitant, barely more than a whisper. Mom! Emily dropped to her knees, sobbing. She turned, and there she was. Lily, thinner than before. Face dirty, but eyes still bright. She ran into her mother's arms, holding on as if she'd never let go again. I missed you, Lily cried. I missed you too, baby, Emily whispered, kissing her head. I'm here. I've got you. But the moment didn't last long. A twig snapped nearby. Emily froze. Someone was coming. Lily's body tensed in her arms. It's him, she whispered. The man who took Daddy. Emily stood up, holding her daughter close, scanning the trees. Out stepped a tall figure, grimy, bearded, eyes cold. He held a hunting knife in one hand, a rifle slung over his shoulder. His expression was calm, almost relaxed. You shouldn't have come here, he said, his voice low and rough. Emily stood her ground. You don't have to do this. It's over. But the man didn't flinch. I didn't mean to take the girl, he muttered. It was the father. He saw too much. He wouldn't stop asking questions. Lily clung to Emily tighter. He hurt Daddy, she said through tears. He chased us. Then, from behind the man, a voice rang out. Drop the knife! Milo! He stood with the flare gun aimed steadily at the man's head. His hands were shaking, but his eyes were locked. I'm done hiding, he said. You've hurt too many. It ends now. The man hesitated for the first time. His fingers twitched. A sudden flash. The flare exploded into the man's chest, not killing him, but knocking him off balance. He stumbled back, dropped the knife, and fell to the ground, stunned. Within seconds, Milo tackled him, pinning him with a strength no one expected from his wiry frame. Sirens wailed in the distance. The search team had tracked Emily's GPS within minutes. Deputies swarmed the area, cuffing the man and radioing for backup. Emily clung to Lily, tears falling freely, while Milo stood off to the side, breathing hard, unsure of what came next. Later, in the safety of a ranger station, the full truth came out. The man was Richard Vance, a former tour guide turned rogue survivalist. Years ago, he'd been accused of stalking campers who strayed too deep into the Everglades. But without evidence, he vanished. Since then, he'd lived off the grid, setting traps, watching hikers, and, on rare occasions, confronting those he believed threatened his land. When Mark found one of his hidden trail cams and tried to report it, Vance followed him. And Lily, leading to that final, tragic night. Mark had fought back, protecting Lily, but was overpowered. Vance buried the body deep in the swamp. Lily escaped, and fate led her straight to Milo. Milo, long misunderstood and labeled a recluse, became the unlikely hero of the story. Though he had no family of his own, He protected Lily like a father would. His courage saved 2 lives and ended a man's reign of fear in the woods. Emily and Lily eventually returned home, their bond stronger than ever. It took time to heal. Nightmares came and went, but they survived. Together, and Milo, for the first time in years, found himself welcomed back into the world. People stopped seeing him as the ghost of the woods and started seeing him for what he really was, a protector. The story of the missing dad and daughter who vanished on a fishing trip turned into something much bigger, a tale of survival, of darkness hidden in plain sight, and of how even in the wildest places, a spark of human kindness can change everything. And now, every time Emily sees a camera or hears the sound of water lapping against the shore, she remembers Mark. She remembers his laugh, his love for adventure, and how, even though he didn't make it back, he gave everything to save their little girl. Some stories don't end how we want them to, but this one, it ended with the truth finally being found.